Hi guys, welcome to the To Be Redefined podcast. I'm Cambry, this is Jenna. Today we're going to be talking about boundaries and relationships, but before we talk about that, Jenna, what are you excited for when it comes to the holidays coming up?
Ooh, good question. I'm actually excited this year because most of my siblings are coming back. We're all gonna get together for Christmas, so that'll be nice.
Oh, good.
And then I also really we have a standing Christmas tradition of going and seeing Christmas lights. So
Is this the third year?
yeah, third year in a row. I know.
I'm so
It's
proud
my
of
favorite.
us.
Me too. We kept it going. It's my
Yeah.
favorite tradition.
Yeah, me too. I'm really looking forward to that as well.
Mhm.
And then we're also having a sibling get together actually.
Oh, fun.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And then yeah, we'll see if it actually snows because it's been warm so far.
I know. It always makes me sad. I feel like it used to snow so much more when we were kids.
I know, especially on Christmas Day.
Right. I know, that's the best. And it just doesn't feel like Christmas, you know? Well, that'll be fun. I'm glad you're getting to do that. It's nice. It's hard, when you're all grown up to get together and stuff. But
because everyone's kind of all over the place. And so we planned this 3 months ago or something like that.
Oh,
And
nice.
we booked an Airbnb in the mountains and
Oh,
stuff like
look
that.
at you.
So yeah, I think it'll be really fun. And we're
Nice.
doing our gift exchange that we do every year and stuff. So
That's really
yeah, the past 2 years we've done it in January instead of December.
Yeah.
Because that's the only time we could all get together. But
Right.
yeah, so I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it.
Nice. Yeah, we're the same way. I feel like every year we do it. It's actually kind of nice because we do it on a separate weekend that's not Christmas. Because we all have different spouses' houses to go to or
Right.
things like that. So it's really kind of actually convenient. But yeah, it's gonna be very fun. All right. So, how was your week?
It was good. I only, so I have my office job and my nanny job, and my kiddos were in Georgia and they were gone for 10 days,
Oh.
and I was just starting to go stir crazy without them. Just
They're like your kids, honestly.
And yeah, so I was really productive on the office side of things. I
Nice.
got a lot done, but yeah, I definitely missed them, and so I saw them on Thursday, and that was really good.
Oh, nice.
They were disappointed that they had to get back to doing school, but
Aren't we all?
but yeah, yep. So
Yeah.
it was pretty good. How was yours?
It was pretty good. Nothing really too exciting. Just got to see my sister earlier today, so that was nice. But yeah, actually, let's see. So this week we're going to talk a lot about relationships and boundaries. Along with talking about how we can better ourselves. I think it's really important to talk about relationships and the power that they have in your life and the influence they have in your life. Specifically unhealthy relationships. I think it's not talked enough about how much those can affect you in a negative way and kind of hinder your growth and hinder your progress in your personal development. And both of us have a very important connection to that topic. We've talked before about our mothers and the struggles in relationships with them. And the fact that we've had to have a lot of boundaries with them and make some different choices in our relationships with them. We're going to kind of talk about that today and what that process looked like for us as far as realizing that was necessary. And I guess just kind of how you can take a look at your relationships and implement maybe some of those in your own life. So, you've talked about your mom before and just kind of how growing up was a challenge with her and how the relationship is kind of still a challenge. And so I guess, how did you realize that your relationship with her was not normal, I guess you could say, or not healthy for you? And what made you realize that you kind of needed to put some boundaries in place?
Yeah, growing up, I always knew kind of that there was something off about like my family and the dysfunction that we experienced. But like when I was younger, the way I perceived it is mom and dad are fighting, both of them are to blame. Like, and I mean, in some cases that was true, you know.
Right, it
like,
takes two to tango.
Yeah, exactly. But the older I got, the more it started to affect me as well. Because my parents had a very unhealthy relationship, and for a while it did kind of seem like that's all that it was, that's all it affected was them. But I mean, it affects the whole family, you know, and I started to see a jealousy in my mom, I guess is the only way that I know how to describe it. And it was her being jealous of my relationship with my dad. And she would just make weird comments about the fact that I loved my dad and stuff like that. And I remember, being like 13 or something like that. And just, like, we were sitting at the dinner table or something, and I was, like, leaning on my dad's shoulder, as a daughter does to...
Who loves her dad.
And my mom, like, got upset that I was doing that, and she was just, like... She made some comment how it looked like he was my boyfriend or something like that. Which is, like, a really weird thing to say to your younger teenage daughter, you know?
Way to make it weird.
So I think that was the start of it, of me just being like, that's weird, you know, like, why did she say that to me, kind of thing. And there was kind of a progression over the years, like, especially within my teenage years, where I would think about interactions that I would see with other people with their moms, and then I would think about mine, and I would just be like, there's something, like, not right here. And so then, like, the older that I got, and especially as my parents' relationship got worse, my mom, she wanted me to, like, pick a side. And she would say that she didn't want me to choose any sides.
Her actions.
But really, she was saying, you need to choose me over your father, or that's kind of the end of it. But I didn't do that because I had a better relationship with my father than I did with my mom at that point. And when I was, you know, a child, because teenagers are children, you know, I was just like, well, why would I give up the healthy relationship with this parent for the unhealthy one where I'm treated badly and abused in this relationship? Like, that didn't make sense to me, and so therefore I was like, the answer's clear. And she would often tell me, like, you're choosing your father over me. Yeah. And looking back, I can look at that and say, well, I was put in a position to do that, which is unhealthy, and that's not good. And so then my parents separated, and well, they separated twice, but the second time was for good. And that was just a really bad time in my life, because my mom was just kind of relentless, like in that she needed me to support her and support her maltreatment of my dad and stuff. And when I didn't do that, she was very unkind. And so I moved out that year, the year that they, that was their final separation. And I knew that, like, I had to move out, or, like, I was gonna end up ending my life or something like that, because it was
not
just,
a good environment.
Yeah, it was that bad. Like, the last 3 months were really, really bad. And so what I had done to start with is that those final 3 months, I avoided my mom, like, at all costs. I genuinely think I went, like, weeks without actually seeing her face to face, and I wanted it to be that way.
Nice.
I felt I felt safer that way, and that was kind of the first thing that kind of clued me in, I guess, to the fact that no contact would be necessary for that relationship. But I moved out, and I literally moved like one street over with my friends, and I wanted to like try to stay in contact, not for the sake of having a relationship with my mom, but my little sisters were still living there.
Yeah.
But it was just all of the same things, just living separately,
Which is like not, I mean, you want to be out of that situation and done with it.
Right,
you know?
exactly. And so she would just text me relentlessly, and it was always stuff regarding my dad that I had no business being told. And so, and it kept on like over and over again. And I forget when I actually did end up blocking her, but I had already made it clear that I did not want to talk about my father, and that if she did end up bringing up my father within the text messages, then I just wouldn't answer. And that, I wanted that to work really badly, but I kept on seeing her text messages, and they had like a really negative effect on me, like on my mind, but also like on my body as well. Like each time I saw her name pop up, like it just would fill me with anxiety and like dread. And when you're just living in a constant state of that, your body just kind of goes crazy. Like you weren't
your nervous system is like it's all
just like I'm
up.
tapping out. And so I had started going to therapy once I moved out, and that was helpful to get from someone else's perspective as well, that like, this is an unhealthy relationship. It's not acceptable for these things to be happening to you. And then, I ultimately made the decision to block her phone number, and that was difficult as well because we literally lived a street apart, and so it was like...
and for the sake of your sisters too, like it's hard to make that choice because basically you're kind of put in a position where it's like, for your own sanity, then you kind of like may not have as much access to your sisters and stuff like that, and they don't really have autonomy or ability to speak for themselves, which is really hard. So.
Exactly, and
it's hard.
And I mean, I do think that I felt a lot more relief from what I was experiencing once I blocked her. But
just
even then,
peace somewhat.
But then, like, I'd be going on a walk through the neighborhood, and I would see her car, and I'd start like hyperventilating and stuff like that.
It's like still too close.
Exactly. And part of that was because there was always this feeling of like, well, what if she shows up at my house? And I had talked to the people that I was living with, and they were just like, we're not letting her in. We'll say that you're not home even if your car is there, you know?
Well, that's a very valid concern though, because I mean, as like a kid who grows up in like this fear of punishment from your parents and stuff, and your parents have so much power in your life, I think it's really easy to be like, kind of feel like that scared little kid of like, she's gonna punish me, she's gonna hurt me, she's gonna do whatever. And even though that's like not a rational thought, that you're like an adult now and you have freedom and ability to walk away from that situation and not be subjected to that, it definitely still feels very like your body feels that, even if it's not like a rational thought.
And I mean, there were just a lot of things that my mom did that showed that she really was out of control. Like there was a time when me and my younger sister and my dad, we went to get dinner because he had found out that we were cutting, and he wanted to help us, you know, he wanted to support us, and I still have a voicemail on my phone where he was just like, you know, we're not going to act like this is the end of the world, but I need to figure out how to help you. And so we ended up going to dinner just so we could just talk about it, you know. And my mom was tracking our locations, and she showed up at the restaurant.
Of course, like in such an emotionally charged moment too. That's
exactly.
Like, that's
and
horrible.
She was just like belligerent, and she kept on like getting in my dad's face and stuff like that.
In public?
Yeah, like it was weird because she was like trying to be discreet, but like her body language was obviously showing that there was a situation going on. And so we had already like paid and stuff like that, so we were just like,
see ya.
Just like get out of the restaurant. And I just remember thinking to myself, because me and my sister, we were just like, we don't want to go home yet, and we had driven separately from my dad. And so I was like, well, I'm not going home yet. I don't care if she can track my location. Like we were afraid, like physically afraid.
Yeah.
And so we went to like a Safeway parking lot, and we just stayed there and like called our friends, and we're just like crying and upset because to a certain extent we were just like, nah, mom's not that crazy,
But like you kind of never know with certain people.
Yeah, exactly.
Like how crazy or how far they're willing to like take stuff.
Yeah, and so that event really showed me that I can't count on her to be in control of herself, and a lot of her behavior does feel like kind of unpredictable, and that's just scary. And so that fear would like live in my body for like a really long time. Yeah. Whenever I would like see her car or see her and stuff like that, it just I was always terrified, which that also showed me that the boundaries that I had put in place of not talking to her, not giving her access to my life, not letting her, have like a key to the house and stuff like that, I just felt like it was the right decision. Yeah. And that has been for the past 2.5 years, I think. And she has continued to prove that it is the right decision. Just because of the way that she tries to circumvent my boundaries and get around them.
Like no respect for them or understanding.
Yes, exactly. And that's the thing. I think that when we think of unhealthy relationships, or I guess the opposite of that, of healthy relationships, what's a huge characteristic is the fact that if someone loves me and respects me, then they are going to respect my boundaries as well. That is an act of love. Right. And that was missing from my relationship with my mom.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like that is so true. Like the people who you, like the people like your mom, like my mom, the people who don't respect boundaries, like they, by acting the way that they act, they kind of prove like the reason why there's a need for boundaries. Yes. Because if their response is bad to the boundaries, like clearly there's a need for them. Clearly there needs to be some like distance and some rules in your relationship, because I mean most people in a healthy relationship will understand boundaries that you put in place, even if they don't love them. Like they'll understand,
and they'll have their own as well. Like it's a going both ways kind of thing, and it's supposed to be based on healthy and kind communication. And I think that it would be a very different story if when I had said like over text to my mom, hey, like it hurts me when you talk about my dad like this and I don't want to hear about these things anymore. It would be a completely different story right now. She was like, I understand that that's your father, and I don't want to come in between you guys. I'm going to respect that, and I won't talk about him anymore. I think we would still have a relationship today if that had happened. But her reaction was basically that I'm going to talk about whatever I want, and you just have to listen to it. And I thought that I had to do that as like a good Christian, that like that's what it meant to honor my mother, was to continue exposing myself to her abuse. But then I got around healthy Christians as well who were just like, no, God hates abuse, and he loves your mom, but he hates abuse, and both of those things can be true at the same time. And God values your physical safety, your mental safety, all those things. And so all those things did end up leading me to block her and go no contact, and that has been a really big deal in my mental health and in the relationships that I have now. It has made me a much healthier person. That's good. And I don't think that going no contact, I think that sometimes it tends to be the first thing that people do, and I do think it should kind of be like a last resort. Absolutely. But in my situation and in yours as well, it was necessary for all of it.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I mean, yeah, definitely. I think a lot of people tend to kind of have that be as like a screw you, like I'm not talking to you ever again, which I think especially more with like acquaintances or just friends or like distant family, that tends to be the response, which is fair. Like if someone is disrespecting you, distance yourself from them. But I think it definitely gets a little trickier when it's immediate family.
Yeah. Oh,
and people who are supposed to love and respect and care for you. I think my situation was, I think I realized it a little bit later, and I think it's kind of cool that you were able to kind of come to that realization on your own. I think that's pretty wise because, like, for me, I think I kind of realized that things were kind of off, but I grew up just thinking my parents were just strict and that they were just normal but just strict, and that
because it's kind of what you hear about, especially in like Christian circles.
Right.
My parents don't let me do this and stuff like that.
Right, because I mean that's a pretty normal thing, and I think obviously parents have a responsibility to guide their kids in a certain direction and to protect them from certain things and whatever.
Right.
But yeah, I think I grew up just kind of thinking like my parents were stricter than other people, and it was kind of like well, that's kind of annoying, but you know, I didn't
Such
really.
is life.
Yeah, like it is what it is, and you know, someday when I'm an adult, I can do the things I want, and it's whatever. And I don't think I really realized there was anything super wrong with it. I mean, there were little like red flags here and there, but first of all, it was just my reality. Like you just kind of accept that as your reality.
It's what's natural and normal to you.
Right.
You know, it's just your life. That's how it feels a lot, I feel like.
Right. When you're raised to believe a certain thing, you're raised like your parents are telling you this is what the truth is, or this is what reality is, or this is what their intentions are, or whatever. I think it's really easy to just be like, oh, okay, because you're supposed to trust your parents. You're supposed to know, like, think that they know what they're talking about.
And you should be able to.
And you should be able to, 100%. So I don't think I really realized a whole lot was going on. I mean, my parents had a bad relationship as well. They're the type of people that like fight in public, and it's really embarrassing. So that, you know, they definitely had their ups and downs, and that was pretty tumultuous. I think the thing that was kind of interesting in my situation is I had older siblings, and they were all a lot older than me, and so I kind of viewed, like, I watched what they went through in high school and the issues they had with my parents and things, and I kind of, my parents led me to believe that it was because my siblings were being rebellious or they were being bad people, and that's why they couldn't be trusted, and they had a bad relationship, and I kind of just took the path of least resistance growing up too, and I just kind of did whatever my mom wanted and just was the perfect angel child, the teacher's pet, like,
I'm sure that was easier.
It's the easier, it literally is the path of least resistance, and you want your parents' approval and their love and everything, so that's what got me their approval and love, and I was a tattletale on my siblings and stuff like that, and I kind of started, like, believed my parents' narrative about my siblings, which is something I regret, but you know, when you're a kid, you can't believe anything else. Yeah. But yeah, I kind of like viewed any conflict within the home as it's everybody else's faults but my parents. Like my parents are the saints; they're the good people.
They can do no wrong.
They're the loving ones with good intentions, and so I believed that to be the case, and I believed that any other problems people had, that was their problem. They're being selfish. They're being rebellious. They're walking away from God. And so it wasn't until I met my husband actually that I started to even really think much about the way that they were acting towards me or treating me, because nobody had ever like been that close to me that had been able to kind of open my eyes and be like, you know,
that's kind of weird.
That's kind of not a healthy relationship. Yeah, so like I think that was the first person who was really that close to me, and also when you're dating someone, a lot of the time like they are involved in your family a lot more, so they're able to see dynamics more than just your average friend or whatever. And so he kind of started to point things out to me where I kind of started to realize like, that's not healthy. Like, so I danced growing up, and I had, you know, like body image, confidence issues, stuff like we've talked about in previous episodes, and you know, my mom was really hard on me in a lot of those areas of like, you need to train harder, you need to do this, which is fine. Like on the surface, that's a fine thing to push your kids to be better, but it definitely started to cross the line of like, you are fat, you need to lose weight, you need to stop eating so much, and like it was very much mentally confusing growing up, because she would like feed me a cinnamon roll and then be like, you're fat. Like, what? So, you know, that was definitely very mentally, like, it kind of messes with you. You're like, what is it? And like, if you think that like the healthy approach is like, hey, like, maybe let me make you like healthier food, or like, let's work on a diet plan or an exercise plan together, like something like that where it's constructive, versus like, you need to lose weight, like, but I'm gonna feed you casseroles and all this crap that's bad for you. And a lot of that just came from my mom's like own insecurity about her own weight and her own appearance, and she was kind of like jealous of me in a sense, like similar to your mom, but like just in my appearance and what I did, it was pretty apparent that she was just projecting onto me.
Well, and it's always easier to like control someone else than it is to like control yourself, you know?
Right.
And so especially with parents, I think it's really easy to try and live vicariously through them, even when they're not living up to their own like goals and aspirations, which is unfortunate. But. It
is, yeah. Well, and I think that's really what had happened is my mom, like, the whole dance thing was like, this is God's plan for your life, this is what you are destined to do, and this is what God wants, and kind of equating like her own desires with what God wants.
God's calling.
Yes, and so like that started when I was literally 3 years old, all the way up. So like that kind of, she definitely did live vicariously through me in the way that she wanted me to, like, who she wanted me to be. This is your career, it's picked out for you because it's what I want. This is what your body needs to look like because it's what I want. You know, I wasn't allowed to cut my hair at all growing up because that was what she wanted. So there were definitely some like red flags, and growing up it's like you kind of notice it, but it's just like, this is my reality, this is just what it is.
Well, and it's also like, what are you going to do about it as a child?
I'm a 13-year-old, 14-year-old kid, like, if I talk back, then I get punished. So it's like, you just kind of internalize a lot of it. And so it wasn't until I met my husband and I would start to kind of like make comments in passing of like, oh, ha ha ha, it's so funny, my mom told me I need a nose job, ha ha ha. Like, that anyone started to be like, that's not good. Like, maybe that's not a healthy thing for a mom to tell her daughter. Maybe. So, maybe just a little. So, yeah, that was kind of what started to open my eyes. And I would say, like I said, I was a very passive child, and I kind of just went along with things. Like, I would do things in secret that I wasn't supposed to do, but, like, I knew I could get away with. And then, like, on the surface, I was this great Christian girl who was super obedient to her parents and danced and had this great career path and everything. So I think it was a huge surprise for my parents, because when I started dating my husband, they were like, I think they thought it was just a casual like high school relationship, and so they were like, yeah, you can date him, I guess, like, it's fine. And then as time went on, like, things started to get a little bit more serious, and like him and I got serious really quickly. Like, probably 3 months in, we were already kind of talking like, you know, I really love you, like, I could see myself marrying you. And so I think it really started to concern them when they realized that we were getting so close. This is a deviation from the plan. Right, because it was my senior year of high school. Like, the plan was, next year you're going to go dance somewhere. You're going to go to college. You're going to go dance at a dance company. Like, this is audition season. Like, you need to be focused. And so they started to kind of get concerned, and we got into the into the winter and the spring, where like stuff started to pick up. I had competitions. I started getting busier with dance. So my mom, like, New Year's Day, I will never forget, New Year's Day, my boyfriend at the time came over, and my mom sat down with him and was like, just so you know, she's going to be really busy over the next few months. You're just not really going to get to see her. And basically, like, you have to be okay with that. And like, we're over here kind of trying to develop a relationship, obviously. In normal relationships, you know, you go out on a date together, like, you know, you want to spend time together.
Consistently.
Right. And to not have to be like, oh gosh, like, I don't know when I'm going to see you next. Like, that's a scary feeling, because I wasn't allowed to drive either. Like, I was not allowed to get my driver's license.
So weird.
I know. I know. So it was very much like, kind of this, like, I didn't have the ability to even like drive and go see him. Like, he had to drive to see me everywhere. So this man, I love him, he was working a full-time job at 18 years old, like, working his butt off, saving, doing great things, had his own car, like, being responsible, trying to have a relationship with me, And basically it started to get, so it started to get like busier, and my mom made sure I stayed busy. And I started to kind of like, I almost forgot an important part. So in that time, he asked my dad to marry me. And my dad said no. And he kind of was like, he didn't say no in his own right. He was like, well, I have to talk to my wife. And so he did, and they both talked to him, and the answer was no. So basically, and they gave like a whole list of demands, like you have to be baptized, you have to, you have to join a church, you have to be a tither, you have to do all of these things in order for our child to be allowed to marry you. But even if you do all of those things, dance still comes first. So it started to become an issue. From that point on, I think they realized what his intentions really were. And so they started to make it harder on us seeing each other.
Just like blocking him out.
Yeah, like basically kind of trying to force us to break up, because they were like, and I would say something like, if I had any disrespect whatsoever for my parents or any disagreement, it'd be like, you're not allowed to go out with him tonight. You're not allowed to see him. I think you probably can't date him anymore because this is getting in the way of dance. So basically, it just started to put more and more and more pressure on our relationship, on my relationship with my parents, because it was basically like, you have to dance. There is no option to make a different choice. So come February, I want to say it was, he was working full time, and my mom would say, like, you're allowed to see her this time, this day, this week, and if you don't see her that time, you can't see her the rest of the week. So it would have to, like, basically he would work all day, crazy hours, getting up at like 4 a.m. He'd be staying up like during the week to FaceTime me until like 11:30 at night. So he wasn't sleeping very much. And then like he could come pick me up from dance and take me home like one night a week or something. And so he was basically putting his own personal life completely on hold for our relationship. And one night we went to a concert together, and he fell asleep at the wheel driving home because my mom took my phone, so I couldn't talk to him and make sure he like made it home okay. And he fell asleep while driving and rolled his truck, and almost like he could have died if he wasn't wearing a seatbelt. Like God protected him 100%. And then like that was one of the most traumatic moments of my life. Sure. And my mom was like, you have to go to dance the next day. You can't go see him till after dance, and then you can stay for an hour, and that's it. So just things like that, where it's just like, dance comes first. Who cares about this guy, basically? And so COVID rolled around, and that was a perfect excuse for her to be like, you can't see him anymore.
It's a COVID.
Yeah, COVID. We have to quarantine. So and my parents are like Fox News watching people. So
they didn't
really care about COVID. It was just because it was a good excuse. So basically my mom was like, you can't see him for indefinitely until lockdown is over, but you can FaceTime him. And that didn't last very long, and like the pressure started to mount on our relationship. It just started to get worse, and they kept saying things like, well, you can't see him anymore, you can't be with him anymore, and I don't like this attitude, this is all because of him, and this is and so it just got worse and worse and worse, and we had like a blow up fight. And so I ran away from him. And because I like seriously feared that I was gonna like harm myself or something like drastic. And so I ran away. I lived with him and his family for about a month. That's where everything really kicked off, as if it's not been like interesting enough already. It's gonna be the longest episode ever. So basically, they figured out where I was, and I basically was like afraid at this point to go back, because like I was not sure what they were gonna do.
And if you'd be able to handle it.
And if I could handle it, because I had seen the way that they had treated my siblings in the past, and like the abuse and things that they had
so things
put
were like
through.
adding up at this
So
point.
I was like starting to be like, okay, now I get my siblings. Like I understand everything they went through. Like I am afraid because I've seen how they treated them. I'm afraid for myself.
Right. Yeah.
So I refused to go home. Basically, it was a back and forth for a couple months of me trying to voice my feelings to them via, like, we went back in person and talked to them at their house and tried to like.
It was like mediators and stuff.
Well, yeah.
Like
So
that,
that was later. So we tried to go back, just the two of us, to their house, have a conversation. That didn't work. We left their house. They came to my in-laws, where I was living at the time, and like stormed their house and were like trying to like burst into their house and like freaking out on them. And basically like this went on and on for a couple months. Like I emailed them back and forth and explained my feelings, like this is why I don't feel like I can be a human being. I don't feel like I can, like you're making me choose between this path that I don't really want. Like at this point I was over dance. Like I knew I wasn't going to have a good career because I was not that naturally talented. Like I was realistic about it.
Well, and if your heart isn't in it in the first place, it doesn't matter how much talent you have anyways.
Right. And so then it turned into basically me rehashing everything with them from my childhood on up of like, this is what you've done. This is what's hurt me. This is what is not, like, I don't view this as an okay or healthy relationship. This is how I feel. And it was basically met with, you're disrespectful, Jimmy's whispering in your ear, he's manipulated you, he's brainwashed you, he's kidnapped you, he's a sexual predator. Basically, like, turning everyone against me, like telling people that I'm a Satanist, telling people that I'm, like, doing all these things. And that this is all Jimmy's fault and he's isolating you and he's forcing you to do this and he's coerced you, basically. So basically, and I've chosen to walk away from God because, remember, dance was God's calling on my life. So if I choose not to dance, I'm walking away from God and I hate God. And so like...
So manipulative.
Right. So they're basically using God to like try to control me. So, and they took, my grandpa had given me inheritance when he had passed away. They took a portion of that and never gave it back. Told me if I went home that they would give it back, and they never have. So basically this went on for a couple months, and like my siblings were getting involved, trying to talk some sense into them and be like, hey, like, can you just listen to what she has to say? And my siblings at first were skeptical, but they finally were like on my side, and they understood, like they did understand and knew what was going on. So basically, it ended with my parents calling the police on me after about 2 months, and they basically forced me to go home. And then telling everyone that God had answered their prayers and that I had come back of my own free will, which was not true. And yeah, so it was nuts. So then basically my soul died a little bit that day when I had to go back. Like that was the worst car ride in my life. So anyway. Basically, we got through the summer and we were just trying to make plans. Like, I was almost 18 of like, how are we going to get through this? What are we going to do? Are we going to listen? Am I going to go to college and just like be separated from you for a year? Like, this is not working for me. So basically, like everything I owned got taken away. Like my phone, I couldn't have a phone. I couldn't have anything. I couldn't leave the house without my parents. Like, basically on house arrest for the summer. They got me to go to college, and my husband now, and I had decided that I was going to go down there. He was going to move there as well and just live. I was going to go to college. He was going to live somewhere else until I was 18. So we survived a couple months, and I turned 18. I came back, and I let my parents know that I am choosing not to dance. I am choosing to get married. I'm back. I don't want you to think everything's normal. It's not. This is what I'm doing. And basically, my mother just like freaked out. And basically, it was just rehashing the same stuff we'd been over a million times. Like, this is, you're disrespectful. You're walking away from God. You're hateful. You're a horrible person. And the only remedy is if I go back and dance. Like, that's literally the only remedy. So basically at this point I'm like, I know that our relationship is like pretty much not fixable, but I'm gonna try. So I tried, we got married. I tried for several more months to like have my voice heard and explain how I felt. It was met with nothing but just a brick wall, basically.
There was never any change.
And it was always like them being the victims of like, well, you've hurt us, and you're the worst daughter, and you've hurt us, and look at everything we've done for you. Like they literally sent me an email list of like, this is everything I've done for you since birth. Why aren't you grateful? So
my mom would do stuff like that too.
Yeah. So basically, we'd been married about 6 months or so, and I agreed to meet with them with a mediator. And that did not go well because it was not a trained therapist, trained mediator. It was someone from my old church. So that went about as well as you can imagine.
Like from their church, it would have been like he's choosing their side and stuff like that.
Exactly. So it basically ended, that conversation was literally my last ditch effort at having a relationship with them. And I told them, if we do not work this out today, I'm not having a relationship with you anymore. And they looked me in the face and said, "Too bad." And so I walked out. And so I blocked them on and off over time. Like it's been 4 years now since everything blew up.
Yeah.
That's not even counting like the running away. That's like 4 years since we've been married. And nothing has changed. I've tried a few times to reconcile and like be like, "Hey, are you ready to have a relationship?" and like talk about things. And they're requiring me to pay them money. They're telling people that they know at their church and otherwise that my husband abuses me, that he is isolating me, that
What?
Yeah, it's wild. It's like, it's funny how
Crazy.
I can have a relationship with everyone else except for you. It's because I'm choosing not to. So basically, all of that to say, really long-winded, but all of that to say, like, my attempts at reconciliation, my attempts at being like, "Hey, this is messed up, like, this stops with me. Like, I've seen how you've treated my siblings. I've seen how you've treated everyone in your life and why you have a messed up relationship with all of your children. Yeah. And I'm saying the buck stops with me. Like, this is not okay. We can't just sweep this under the rug anymore like we've been doing for 20 plus years. Like, we need to address this and figure it out." And that was not well received, and it was not listened to. And so basically, currently I have made the choice to go no contact with my parents. They're not blocked anymore. I've kind of gone back and forth between blocking and unblocking. We've had some conversations since then, and none of them have ended well.
Right, they're just not productive.
No, like when you've
you don't get
said
anywhere.
everything you can say to someone and it's not met with any kind of understanding, there's no point in saying it anymore. Like, you kind of just have to accept that that person doesn't want to be in your life, and you have to make the choice that is best for your peace and for your existing family.
Yes.
And me and my husband, I got married, me and my husband are a family unit now. And so I had to make the choice that was best for us, for our peace, for our health, because I cannot continue, I know in my heart I cannot continue to try to have a relationship because it's just torture mentally and emotionally, and I can't do it anymore. So I have to
It's just not
I have to
good
take
for
a
you.
step back. Like I have to. And so it was a really hard decision to make. That is the last resort. Like, when you try so many times with somebody, you have to come to a point where you're like, okay, like, how many more times can we do this? It's been 4 years, nothing has changed. Like, it's time. And so, it's still hard. It's still sad. Like, I'm not gonna pretend that I don't care, I don't feel anything, but
it's like, they're your parents, and
Right.
I think that's something that's not talked about enough, is how difficult of a decision it is. Like,
especially with your parents.
like, if we're being real, like, no one is just like, I'm gonna cut this person off and just do it for no reason, and it's not gonna affect me in any ways. Like, the day that I went no contact, like, I bawled my eyes out. I was devastated, because how many moms do you get,
One.
Exactly.
And they're supposed to be your best friend. Like, you're supposed to be able to trust them and love them.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that needs to be talked about more, is that you kind of have to grieve the entire process as well, and just have the understanding for yourself that it's not an easy decision to make. That doesn't make it the wrong decision. I think that what my mom had said a couple times, because she would, like, one thing that I don't love about Gmail is that it sends your blocked emails to spam, so you can still see them.
Yes.
She had emailed me a few times, and she would say things like, the anxiety that you experience is because you're at odds with me, and stuff like that. Like, she would try and use that as a reason to say that I'm not right with God, and things like that. And I had been going to therapy, and I had never been stronger in my faith then. And so I was just like, no, like, just because something feels difficult doesn't mean that it's, like, the wrong decision. And I think that something that my pastor has said a couple times is that every relationship is defined by boundaries. And I think that that's really important. Like, I think that sometimes people want to think that boundaries are reserved for, like, really bad relationships, and it's just like, no, the best of relationships have good boundaries. And the hope in having boundaries and saying, if you talk to me like this, then this will be what I will do. The hope and the goal is that it's going to be received positively. But you can't control other people.
Mhm.
That's like, boundaries aren't trying to control other people. It's just saying that, like, you know, you can do whatever you want to do, but I am going to do what I will do.
Yeah, it's natural consequences, and kind of explaining, like, these are going to be the consequences of what your actions are. Like, it just is.
Yeah, exactly. And so a resource that I found was really helpful was a book called Boundaries by, I think, Dr. Henry Cloud. And I had been recommended that by my therapist, and I read it the year that I went no contact, I believe, or like around that time. And it really helped me to understand that, like, I wasn't being a bad person, because I felt mean to like block my mom.
It feels like
you know?
vindictive.
Yeah. And so, but then like reading through the book helped me to really understand that, you know, no, it's healthy, because I cannot control my mom's actions. I can't control the words that she uses or the tone that she speaks in, but I can limit my exposure to them. And that proved to be a very healthy decision. And I really do recommend that book. Like, we'll put it in the notes or whatever. But yeah, I think that if anyone's looking for resources, or if they have questions on what a boundary actually is, because I think that sometimes, like, narcissists will use boundaries as an attempt to like manipulate people. And just be like, well, if you do this, then I'm gonna do this. And that's not it. Yeah, no, absolutely not. Like, my response to my mom was, first it was, hey, if you talk about this, I'm not going to respond. I won't engage in conversation. She can keep talking about whatever she wants to, but I just will not reciprocate. But then it was at the point where she just continued and continued, so there needed to be a greater boundary. And I was just like, well, this can't keep on happening, because it was damaging to me, like, and it really was. So I just had to be like, you know, again, you can text my number however many times you want to. I will not see your text because I have blocked you. That's what I'm going to do. She can do whatever she wants, and I don't want her to do whatever she wants, obviously, but even if someone does not change the relationship for the better, like, you still have to protect yourself, and especially protect your family. Like, I think that that's really important, because I think that sometimes our perspective is that, well, this is only going to affect me. But then it's like, well, think about your spouse, or think about your future children and stuff, and it just kind of grows and grows, and you have to make decisions for the best of everyone.
Well, and that's like the whole, like, I feel like it's kind of a popular thing to be like a cycle breaker, but it is a really important thing.
Absolutely.
Because that is what that is. That's recognizing the generational pain or generational, like, trauma, so to speak. And recognizing what is unhealthy about that, and then saying, like, okay, this is what I'm going to do differently. And, you know, I'm not going to, like, I love myself and I love my family enough to not continue to put myself through emotional abuse, physical abuse, any of it. I'm going to do, and like, that's the thing too, is I think you need to make sure your conscience is clear, know that you're being as good of a person in the situation as you can, and you are trying your best,
because it's crappy situations, you know. It's never like, oh, I'm doing this because a good thing is going on,
and it's fun. Like, for me, like, I explored every option that I had in the moment when I had to make these big decisions, like, am I going to get married and just kind of like have to do what I feel like is best for me, versus like just living my life the way that my parents want it to be. Do I have any other options? Basically, I explored every option I had, and I felt like I was kind of backed into a corner to where that was the only option that I had. And it wasn't like I was trying to do anything crazy. Like, I'm not trying to go like do drugs or go be like a criminal. Like, I just want to get married to a person who I love. That's
and
all
have
I want.
Autonomy over yourself and your decisions.
I'm an adult. I'm a legal adult. Like, I just have the ability to say, like, hey, I don't enjoy doing that. I don't want to do that. I don't want that to be my career path. I would rather get married. And, you know, so I feel like yes, I wish things could have been different. I wish I could have made a different decision, but in the moment, that was the only decision I could have made, and that was the best decision I could have made. Therefore, my conscience is clear. I think it's really important to kind of explore every possible option and say, like, is there another way that I can go about this? Is there a way that I can go about this without having to cut them off? Is there a way that I can, like, somewhat take their advice or their feelings into consideration? When you have explored all of those things and you're realizing that, like, you are doing the best that you can in that situation, then your conscience can be clear and you can say, okay, I need to protect myself, I need to protect my family, and I need to ultimately choose myself and my happiness, my joy, my peace over this person. Because I mean, like, no relationship is worth sucking the life out of you. Like, it's just not.
Right. Yeah. And I think something that people need to consider as well is that boundaries are good for everyone involved. Like, it's not good for another person is to, like, let them abuse you.
True.
That's not good for them. No one should desire that someone would be an abuser, you know? And so I think that it's really important to think of it in this way, where you're just like, you know, I love this person enough to not allow them to do this to me. And again, like what you said, like, we wish that it had gone another direction. We wish that the boundaries would have been respected, but that's just not what the story was. And so therefore there has to be consequences to those boundaries. And like you said, they're natural as well. Like, it's not like they're coming out of left field or they're unfair or vindictive. Like, that's not the goal with them. It's about being level-headed and sane, even when another person is not capable of doing that for you.
That is so true. Yeah. Well, and I think, like, everybody's journey is going to look different with something like this, where, you know, and not everybody is, like, mentally unwell to the point where, like, our parents are, where, like, they physically cannot, like, make a different choice. I mean, anyone can change at any time, but, like, you know, I feel like they're in such an unhealthy place that they're not able to even be self-aware or see anything wrong with what they're doing. Like, they think they have pure intentions. So everyone's situation is going to look a little bit different. Like, for me, I had to make several attempts at reconciliation before I felt like no contact was the right thing to do. And I've worked on myself throughout the process too. Like, don't think that just because you cut someone off, it's going to fix you. It's not.
Yeah,
it's not. Point. And also, you may never get the apology you're looking for or the change of behavior you're looking for. Like, just by cutting someone off, it's not going to be like, I'm going to show you, and they're going to come crawling back and be like, I'm so sorry. Like, in our situation, that has never happened. We have never received an apology that we wish we could. So you have to heal for yourself and not just be waiting on an apology in order to heal and to change and to kind of evolve out of that situation. But, like, I've made several attempts at reconciliation. I've gone back several times to both my parents and been like, hey, you know, like, are you ready to talk about this now? Like, I'm even willing to let go of the childhood stuff. Like, can you just stop saying all of the slander and things you're saying right now? And they weren't willing to do that. And so every single time that I went back and I was hurt and I was rejected, it kind of solidified even more in my brain of, like, I am making the right decision and they're never going to change. And it moves you more towards a place of acceptance. So, like, for some people, you may have to, like, it may take a while to get to that point. I have family members, it's taken them a little bit longer to get to that point where they're realizing that that's a step they need to take. Sometimes it's really quick, but I would encourage you to exhaust all your options first and to continue to work on yourself in those situations, because, like, now, neither of my parents are blocked. They know that they're not blocked. They know that they, at any time, can choose to come back and say, hey, I'm ready to, like, reconcile and have a relationship with you and love and accept you again. And they haven't done that yet, but I have a clear conscience, and I think, like, I've moved to a place of forgiveness, which is a choice every day that you have to make, but and for sure we can talk more about forgiveness another time, but like, I feel like I have forgiven them, and I feel a peace in my heart that I've done the right thing, and I'm ready. Like, the door is open if they would like to come back and to work on things. But until then, like, I'm just going to keep working on myself and loving my family and taking care of, you know, those who are important to me and who choose to be in my life. And, you know, that's that is the hard part about it, is accepting the situation that you can't change. But really, like, that is the acceptance and that is the peace of knowing you can't change other people, and knowing that there's nothing you can do. You've said all you can say as many times as you've said it, and there's nothing you can do to change it. And then you can move into a place of peace and, like, I can let that go now because the ball is in their court. It is now their responsibility.
Yeah, and I think that I was just thinking about our episode on victimhood and how that ties very well into this, that you do have to reach that point of being like, I can't control them, I'm not responsible for them or their actions, so that you can stop being a victim and so that you can stop being held down by whatever their actions were that harmed you. Because, if you're just waiting for an apology or waiting for changed behavior, like, you are allowing yourself to still be under their control. Because it's subjected to their behavior, instead of saying, if they apologize, if they do this, then that's great, but I'm still going to keep on working forward. And I mean, when we're talking about bettering ourselves, like, we want to be careful that we are also being healthy, like, in our mind and in our behaviors as well. Because to think that we could never be like the people who have harmed us,
it's just naive.
Yeah, exactly. And
we all have, like, that propensity to
and so we need to be mindful of that and examine our own relationships and be like, am I the problem? And I think that is what can make the world actually better, is by everyone not letting themselves be abused, and also working on themselves and trying to be more kind and more loving to people, and think of, like, the boundaries that other people have put in place for you, and not being like, well, that hurt my feelings, but, like, being respectful of them.
Everybody could use a little more self-awareness.
Absolutely.
Have you felt like you've gotten, like, from people that you've told that you're no contact with your mom, just, like, average people on the street, or, like, other relationships in your life, do you feel like that's, like, had a good response from people, or do you feel like people have been judgmental about it?
It kind of depends. I want to say that most people who actually understand the situation, they're just like, that makes perfect sense, like, that's healthy, that's appropriate, but a lot of people just don't get it. And I do think that there's kind of some generational differences too, where there are some people who are just like, family is everything, like, she's your mom, like, you can't cut her off, like, she loves you. And so I've definitely heard that side of things, and like, there earlier on, it, like, really hurt, because it would be like, you don't understand the abuse that I've experienced, and, like, the scars that it's left on my mind and my body and all these things. And so then I had to grow in that, and in accepting my own decision as well, and not needing other people's approval of it. Which also is a boundary. Like, being like, I don't get any satisfaction or anything like that from your opinion and approval of my decisions. Like, I had to just be like, well, I'm making the best decision for myself, and no one else can influence that. And a lot of times it did come from people who just did not understand the situation, and if I, like, sat down with them all day and explained every little situation of my experience with my mom,
they might understand. Like, you almost have to be, like, gracious with those people and be like, I'm grateful for you that you don't understand.
Absolutely.
Like, I'm glad that you've had a great life, that you've never been in this situation, and that you don't have the ability to understand. Like, I love that for you.
And, like, and so then, like, that experience of not having to have strong boundaries with someone, like, if you don't understand it, then there's no need to have this conversation. And sometimes you just, you have to learn to walk away from things like that. The people who support me, they're the ones whose opinions matter, because they've either experienced the same abuse at the hands of my mom, or they have witnessed it from afar, And I mean, I think that there's always going to be part of me that is sad about it, and angry. I think that those emotions go hand in hand sometimes.
Yeah, and I think it's okay and healthy to have both of those.
Yeah, absolutely. The sadness allows you to kind of process what happened and like grieve over it, and then I think the anger allows it to not happen again. And I think that that's really important, that I have made the decision to not allow myself to be abused again. And that is because I've been angry about how I've been treated.
And your anger is you recognizing the injustice of how you were treated. And then the sadness is natural and normal, and it's part of it. Like, you can't not feel those things. Like, it is important to feel those things and kind of go through a grieving process. But I think, like, a lot of the time, once you get to the point of going no contact with someone, you've already emotionally processed so much of it and like been hurt over and over again that, like, in a way, a kind of a strange way, like, no contact kind of feels like peace finally.
Absolutely.
Doesn't mean there's not a lot of work on the other side of that you have to do, but I think it definitely, it kind of feels like closure somewhat.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, I mean, all you can do is just work on yourself and continue to be you, and you know, just, you can pray for those people, and you can love those people from afar, and you know, the people who are in your life are the ones who choose to be there and who love you for who you are, and that's all you can do. So,
And that's okay.
yes. But yeah, we love all of you guys, and you know, it's a process, but you guys can do it. We love you.
And if there's any like questions about what the process looks like of like having good boundaries and stuff, we'd love to hear from you guys.
Yeah.
And,
Have a good week. Bye.